was around 900 or 901 AD. And then she brought also a liturgy of songs, and that's the primary mnemonic device through which her teachings were transferred intergenerationally down to today. So here's one of the songs which is attributed to her. In the song, she says, Wakantanka Tokeya Chewakye Mitake Ob, which is attributed to her. Waniktacha Chewakye. It's saying, we pray to God first, above all. We pray that we may have life. We may have life with the people. So it's not referring to like your physical life, but I think it's has the more metaphorical connotation of the eternal life. Eternal life. It's not a flute melody, but since you asked, I'll play it on the flute and then I'll sing it.
Thank you.
Tokeya Chewakye Wakayantanka Tokeya Chewakye Mitakuye Wanitacha Tokeya Chewakye Wakayantaka Tokeya Chewakye Mitakuye Oyo Wanitacha Tokeya Chewakye. That's the song, one of many songs that's attributed to her, the White Buffalo Cattleman.
Thank you. Well, guys, want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll pass it over to Chris here, and I think we're going to do the continue on from where we left off with the slide presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent, Kevin.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for Jessica for hosting this webinar. What is the definition of a webinar?
Good question. I think it's basically like a Zoom meeting where a bunch of people can be on and we're only seeing a few faces, the presenters, the panelists, so-called. Now I need to go look up the definition of webinar.
Well, my understanding is that a webinar is interactive, correct?
Through the chat option, yeah. Much less interactive than a Zoom meeting, meant for a bigger audience.
Okay, when we met earlier online today, this afternoon, to prepare for tonight, we each agreed that during the presentation, we will entertain questions and respond to them as we go on, so that while the questions are fresh in our viewers' minds, we will answer them spontaneously and progress slide by slide until we reach a certain slide, which I won't mention now. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
All right, now, I hate to put on my professor's hat, but when you teach in the classroom, usually you review the previous lesson to begin, to refresh people's memory. Sort of like a serial, like watching The Fugitive. If it's a two-part show, you'll see the previous part, clips from it. I'd like to go back to our PowerPoint presentation and review a couple of the slides that we did last time with with this new information. Kevin asked me to add slide number 2. Could we bring that up, please?
Sure thing.
Beginning with the title slide.
Mhm. Can you all see it?
I don't see it yet.
How about now?
Yep.
I do see it. Very good.
Good.
Can all our viewers see this slide?
I hope so.
I do.
Okay. Well, as you see from the date, this latest version is the 3rd version that Kevin and I put together, is dated April 14th, 2020, a couple of days ago. Okay. Now, we presented an earlier version of this slideshow presentation 2 weeks ago when we did part 1 of this webinar. You'll see in the background there, actually in the foreground, a sign that reads in Spanish, Baha'u'llah is the return of Veera Cochin. Kevin, we aren't going to get to the individual Indigenous Messengers of God, as we call them in our series. Remember, we have 64 articles so far in that series on Bahá'í-teachings.org, which is the most popular Baha'i website in the world today. It's not official, it's an individual initiative. My understanding, though, is it has the profound respect of the institutions. It's a great teaching tool. I get statistics from time to time on how many inquiries on the faith that it generates. And it's a wonderful resource for everyone, Baha'is and their contacts and friends and seekers alike. So Bahá'í-teachings.org is the website. If you want to pull up the website a minute, Jessica.
Okay. Which website?
Bahá'í-teachings.org.
Okay, 1 second here.
Then I'll show our viewers how to get to the Indigenous Messengers of God series, because we'll be referring to this series throughout the presentation tonight. And if there's sustained interest in this subject matter, we may have additional seminars.
Okay.
Okay, now you see this is Bahá'í-teachings.org. Personal perspectives inspired by Baha'i teachings. That's what's happening tonight. So we're going to see what's called a disclaimer in one of the articles. Do you see the search function, Jessica?
Yes.
Okay, would you click Indigenous? Search Indigenous.
Mhm.
And by the way, friends, this is how you can search any topic of approximately 5,000 articles on Bahá'í-teachings.org published so far. Okay, can you click on any of these
Sure.
articles? Now click on Indigenous Messengers of God. I did not see the title slide. Maybe it appeared, but I didn't see it.
You want me to go back to the slide?
You see where it says part 64 in series? That would be our latest article, but click on Indigenous Messengers of God, please, where it says series.
Oh, here?
Above?
Oh, here. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so friends, you see it. This is the series, Indigenous Messengers of God, 64 articles with more to come, God willing. Now let's click on the latest article, Honoring Indigenous Customs, Promoting Reciprocal Respect. We're going to be covering that in our slideshow presentation. And here I'd like to point out what we call a disclaimer. Jessica, would you read that disclaimer beginning with the views?
The views expressed in our content reflect individual perspectives and do not represent the official views of the Baha'i Faith.
Okay, whose views are those? Mine, Kevin's. So I want the friends to understand that we're offering our personal Baha'i-inspired perspectives. Hopefully they're good perspectives. We present them as gifts to our audience to consider, to think about, pray about, meditate on, reflect on, and study more deeply. All right, let's cut away from the series now and go back to the PowerPoint. Now, the title of this presentation is on Abdu'l-Bahá's prophecy, quote, "These Indians will enlighten the whole world." You see the 3 dots, that's called the diaeresis. That means there's missing text. So this is a shortened version of the prophecy. But Kevin, briefly, who is Veera Cochin?
As far as I know, Veera Cochin was the founder of the civilization of the Andean region known as the Inca Empire. And so he originated from that. There's an island in Lago Titicaca, Lake Titicaca, where he ascended from the heavens or descended from the heavens and walked across the water to deliver this message to the people.
Thank you, Kevin. That's a point that former House of Justice member Hooper Dunbar made in a talk in 2019, which is quoted later on in the presentation, where he said that the Inca people had no problems believing in Jesus Christ walking on water because of what you just said.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next slide. Now, this is the new slide at Kevin's request, and I'd like Kevin to please read this wonderful excerpt from a letter from the Universal House of Justice. Would you please?
Sure. And this is a message to a gathering of Indigenous friends in Ganado. I believe that's in Arizona on the Navajo reservation.
And is this the quote that you read last time that was on your wall?
Yeah.
We got so many questions about that. Where is that from? So folks, this is where it's from.
That's it, yeah.
Pay attention now, yeah.
I'll read it again since Chris asked.
you.
I'll read it, okay.
Thank you.
The all-wise creator of earth and heaven has, from the beginning which has no beginning, sent to his peoples divine messengers to guide them to the straight path. These wise ones have come to establish the unity of the kingdom in human hearts. This great evolutionary process of building the organic unity of the human race has entered a new stage with this mighty message of Baha'u'llah. His voice is the voice of the Great Spirit. His love for humankind is the force of the new age. He who sends the rain, who causes the sun and the stars to shine, the rivers to flow and the winds to blow, and the earth to give forth her bounties, has, in this great day, sent to all mankind Baha'u'llah. It is this great one who has opened the door of divine knowledge to every soul. It is his teachings that will establish world unity and bring about universal peace. The people of the world are the tools in his hand. They must strive to understand his message and to walk in the path of his divine guidance. Every human being is responsible in this day to seek the truth for himself and thereafter to live according to that wise counsel. The old ones have all longed for this sweet message. Praise God, you have found it. Universal House of Justice, 18 May, 1972.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
This is a truly remarkable letter, isn't it?
Yes.
Who is the primary audience?
Well, this message was directed to the friends gathered, primarily Navajo people gathered there at that meeting in Ganado, Arizona.
Do you think the audience influenced, or we'll put it the other way around, that the Universal House of Justice's knowledge about the audience of influence the language that's being used here in this letter?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, just, I can't help but say that one of the members of the Universal House of Justice at that time was Mr. Amos Gibson. And Amos Gibson was one of the original pioneers to the Navajo Reservation. So he was very, very familiar with probably most of the people that this letter is being addressed to.
Wow.
Have you ever seen the use of the word these wise ones ever before in any other letter from the house?
No,
This is fairly unique, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah.
What might the wise ones be referring to?
Well, I know that that Amos Gibson in particular was very knowledgeable of the traditional ways of the Navajo, of the holy souls that have appeared amongst them throughout time.
Amongst the Navajo people?
Yes, yes.
More broadly, could these wise ones refer, let's say, first and foremost, to divine messengers that were sent to all peoples?
Yeah, I would say that because it's capitalized here, I think that this was not a mistake from the House of Justice, that it's probably, I would say that it's referring to these divine, in my view, to these divine messengers. It alludes to in the previous sentence.
Thank you. Jessica,
Mhm.
what is your understanding of the expression old world?
Hmm.
Or
Where
let,
is it?
let me ask the follow-up question. Comment on your understanding of the old world and the new world.
Well, one way that I think of it is the old world is based on the mentality of division.
Geographically, this is a geographic question.
Oh, everything other than the Americas, mainly Europe.
Now, question for Kevin. Kevin, how important is the new world geographically and socially and spiritually?
I don't know. The way I look at it, the new world is Europe.
From the European sense.
Yeah, we're living in the old world. This is the old world right here. This
There
is
you
the
Very
yeah,
good
the
point.
center of the universe right here.
All right. Roughly how much of the world does the new world comprise?
The new world, I mean, this world that we're in right here.
Talk about the America. We'll use it as a European origin, a term for the Americas, the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, well, it's half of the world. So the half of the world is on this side of the planet, and that's what's considered the Western Hemisphere. That's the all of the so-called Americas, from Greenland, all the way down to the southern tip, Tierra del Fuego. And then the other side of the world would be comprised of the continents of Europe and Asia and Africa and Australia.
So if the new world is roughly half the world, that's pretty important, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, exactly. It's half the world, just like we said.
So what we're doing is we're talking in this presentation about the spiritual tradition and history and heritage of half the world.
Yes.
All right, let's move on. Okay, here is our disclaimer, and we actually quote the same disclaimer as on Bahá'íTeachings.org that appears at the beginning of each article. Jessica, would you like to read that, please?
Sure. This is a work in progress. The views expressed in our content reflect individual perspectives and do not represent the official views of the Baha'i Faith. Feedback invited.
Okay, the photos are linked. So now what I'd like you to do before we continue on this, one problem with presentations is retention of the information. What can the viewer walk away with? How much will each viewer remember? So we've anticipated this problem beforehand by posting information that we're going to cover in this presentation. Jessica, would you please show our viewers how to access the documents that you've uploaded?
Sure. Give me 1 second here. So folks, if you go to Green Acre's new website, it's greenacre.news. I'm going to pull it up for you here. So here's our website. If you go to events, you'll see down here, this is the event you are currently in. You click on it here. Scroll down, and here are all the documents. However, I don't see the slide.
I meant that That's
Mhm.
enlighten the whole world.
Oh, that's this one? Okay,
You want to click on that?
sure.
So friends, this is the same slideshow that we're going over tonight. You can each download and send a link for others to download if you like to. You can view the whole presentation. In fact, some have done this already. Now let's go back to our slideshow.
Sure thing.
Is this the one you had up before?
Yep.
Okay, let's go back to slide 2.
Mm,
Now, as I recall, the only question that we got in part 1 was as to the source of this beautiful message from the Universal House of Justice. Did you receive more questions after part 1 2 weeks ago, Jessica?
no.
Okay, well, in answer to the question, I want you to know that everything that's underlined pretty much is a link, okay? So would you, for those who want to access this letter in full and make sure we didn't make this up, we didn't pull this out of thin air, would you please click on the link that reads 18 May 1972?
And this is what comes up.
Okay, friends, you'll have to search in the letter. I think it should be, let's look in the table of contents. From Messages from the Universal House of Justice, 1968 to 1973. So this is a published letter from the House. Let's go down.
Mhm.
And it should say to the Baha'is in, what's the city in Arizona again?
It's Ganado,
Maybe 90, something like that.
1972. Yeah.
I see 80, 88, these are 1970. Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
That's to the Baha'i.
Number 96, 96.
So this is letter number 96.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because each and every source that we quote is something that the friends should be able to verify independently and study independently as well. Thank you, Jessica.
Sure.
Let's now go to slide number 3. We already covered that, except I want to say that the photos are also attributed, not by way of citations, but by way of links. They should be enabled in the PDF. If you click a photo, you're going to be seeing its source, where we got it from. And finally, each of you out there tonight who have registered, we want to welcome all the friends, and they're all equally important and welcome and valued. But those who are registered have the opportunity via chat to give us not only questions, but feedback. Now, will you be able to capture and save the chats, the questions, and the feedback, Jessica?
We try not to save the chats for people's security.
All right, would there be a way that feedback can be sent to you by email?
Sure. Yep, people can just email greenacre@usbnc.org.
Very good. So feedback is invited. We consider the audience tonight to be our very first focus group. We want to make this the best we can. Constructive criticism, in other words, recommendations, is what will be most useful for us. You know, how to tweak a word here and there. But let's see if anybody has any questions before we continue. Anyone have any questions, any of the viewers, about this letter from the House that we just covered?
Can you guys see the chat box? There is a question in the chat box. Can you see it?
I see chat with a 5. I don't see any chat messages.
Okay.
Do I have to click on chat?
Yeah.
From Greg Young, all panelists, no questions yet.
There's one before that.
Could you bring up the questions as they come along, Jessica?
That's probably not totally a great idea because we don't want to give people's identity away.
Oh, I shouldn't have mentioned a name then. Okay, well, let me look on the chat. Well, But if I bring it up, is it just viewable by me?
Correct.
All right. Kevin, can you see the chat?
Yeah, there's one that says, speak more on indigenous prophets and prophecy in relation to progressive revelation from, I guess, from my perspective.
Please.
Want me to say something about that? Okay, I'd be so glad. Yeah, with regard to progressive revelation. Yeah, well, you know, the only prophecies that I know about specifically, you know, just from my own firsthand experience, would be with regard to the again this Peninsula Skawi, white buffalo calf woman, and one of the things that I'll mention that's really interesting to me is that this is not really printed anywhere, but was that she was the one that gave the people the name Lakota or Dakota, and I know that in the books it's always translated, this word Dakota is translated as allies or friends, but that is categorically not true. That's erroneous. And because there's a word for that, you can say kolakichie or kolakichiapi. You could be friends or allies, but that's not the word. That's not Lakota. So Lakota is the word. It's a name that this woman gave the people after she brought this the message, the divine message, and so I don't really know exactly how to translate it, but people around my aunt always says it just means to be civilized. It means that we're civilized. Other people say no, it means to pray. It means to have faith. It means people have received the laws, the divine, the holy laws. So I think it really means all of those things. But the main thing was that this woman, this Angela Skawi, she was authorized to appear on behalf of this the one that she refers to as Tunkashila. Now Tunkashila is a word, it's an honorific title. It means grandfather. Now if you want to say just affectionately grandfather, the kids always say Lala. They say Lala means grandfather, but the more formal way of saying it is Tunkashila. So Tunkashila means is a formal word for grandfather. So anyway, that's what this woman refers to, how she refers to the one who authorized her to appear. And then the other thing that she indicated was that at the conclusion of her dispensation, or the period of time in which her message would be enforced, she indicated that this grandfather himself would appear on the earth and would guide the people. So anyway, and okay, and that she would come ahead of that time to indicate that there was a time for the appearance. That's why people, you know, recently or a few years ago, over in Janesville, Wisconsin, they had this white buffalo born over there. They call it Miracle, which it really is, because it was, I think it's like 1 in 7 million chances for a white buffalo to appear. But subsequent to that, there's been several. Now, I wouldn't say that that's you know, that's not it. I mean, I hate to you know, really burst any bubbles, but I think that the buffalo, reason why this woman had that name, white buffalo calf woman, was because the buffalo for the people out here in the prairies was like one-stop shopping. It was like people in need of anything, they see the herd of buffalo. It's for them like an urban dweller to come upon a big mega mall. It's like a big mega mall because everything they need is there. Their food, their clothing, their shelter, their tools, everything is all in one. The buffalo or bison were so essential and so all pervasive in terms of what they could supply for the needs and survival of the people. So then this woman, her appearance was to fulfill the needs, but the spiritual needs of the people. So that's why it's related to the white buffalo. And so to me, this appearance in Wisconsin of this little bison, this white buffalo or white bison, it just simply is a signal. It's a wake up call to the people to begin to realize that we are living in these times fulfillment of divine revelation. And so, this is something that recently, when they had this water protection things going on here at Standing Rock, the people, they were asking about how you say this word, decolonize. Is there a Dakota word for that, or Lakota word for that? And there is a word for that. But it's but it means, how you say that, you'd say ki Lakota or ki Dakota. And that just means to go back to become a Lakota, to go back to become a Dakota. So what it's saying is you don't have to go back in time. What it refers to is you go back to that source, to connect to that revelation, to connect to that one who sent the Ptahintla Skawi. And this is my heretical belief, is that when this Tunkashila, this is not heretical belief, but Tunkashila, to me, the way I understand it, is the one who authorized the messengers to appear, the holy souls to appear, the wise ones to appear. So to me, when this Ptahintla Skawi, she enjoined the people, when they pray and they anticipate the source of divine blessing, and they pray to that one, Tunkashila, that's Baha'u'llah. That's my understanding. So when you say Kilakota, to decolonize, but you don't have to anything, but you just go back to that source, go back to that source of divinity, source of revelation. And that's what we're all invited to do now, everybody in the world, especially now in this, as we're leading up now to this holy period, the Rizvan period, which is really the most portentous, the most significant moment in human history, demarking the sudden transition from the age of the prophetic cycle, in which all these messengers brought the glad tidings, into the day of fulfillment. So that's what we're observing in the upcoming festival, the Rizwan festival, is the moment when that announcement was made that we are living in the day of fulfillment.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
Even though this is jumping ahead of ourselves, the question was, can we let Kevin speak more on indigenous prophets and prophecy in relation to progressive revelation from his perspective? We are wasting time here. Well, if I may, let's go to the slide with White Buffalo Calf Woman's 10 Commandments. Can we pull that up?
Do you happen to know how many slides down it is?
I don't have it in front of me, but it should be around 12, something like that. Keep going. It's after Daganawida, the peacemaker.
Yeah, it's quite a ways up.
Keep going.
There we go.
Okay, so I won't mention the name of the questioner, but in response to the questioner, Kevin and I, some of this is obscured in my view by the pictures, but it says, read about this Lakota messenger of God in parts 3, 16, 19, 23, 24. What are the rest of the numbers, Jessica?
25, 27, and 28 of the Indigenous Messengers of God series.
Jessica, my connection was interrupted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a link so the questioner can read the several articles in this series. Let's go to slide 23, please. All right, Kevin, would you like to comment about how we came up with this?
Yeah, this is that WBCW that refers to White Buffalo Calf Woman. Like I said, that's just her title, Ptahintla Skawi. Yeah, that's her name. And by the way, I'll just mention that, again, this is not written anywhere, but according to the oral traditions that I've heard, I've come across, this Ptahintla Skawi was the third of these holy maidens who came. The first one, they call her, is Trunka Wakawi, the holy foundation stone woman. The next one was Wanachja Washtewi, the beautiful flower woman. and this one, Potential Scully, the white buffalo calf woman. And so it's, to me, it's so interesting that they each are named after one of the kingdoms in succession. So the first one would be the mineral kingdom, the second one would be the plant kingdom, and the third one, this the ancient Lascawi, is the animal kingdom. And so since everything comes in fours, you know, this to me, when I look at page 100 and God Passes By, it has the quotation from Baha'u'llah when he was in the Siachal, and the maid of heaven appeared to him and intimated his revelation. To me, that fits in right there as the fourth one. But that's just my own personal understanding of it. But yeah, Chris, so these are what you could say are 10 commandments. And this, if you look at the bottom, this lady at the bottom, it's the footnote, it says Frances Densmore. She was a very famous pioneer in the field of it's called ethnomusicology. And so she came to Standing Rock in 1911, and she secured, she was just going around interviewing people, but everybody refused to really share anything with her. And finally, what happened was that the elder informants commandeered her research, and they told her that they wanted to share, but they had to do it their way. So the way that they had to do it is they had to start at the very beginning and go through the source of all sacredness, source of all holiness. So at the very beginning of this document, it's a big, thick book, thick document, this called Teton Sioux Music. But they took over, the elders took over her whole research, and they in no uncertain terms made it known that they had to start at the beginning, which was the account of the Potential Scully, the white buffalo calf woman. And they nominated the most qualified person there at that time. Now, this was in 1911, so these were elders in 1911. These are all people born, you know, in the early 1800s, primarily, or early to mid 1800s. And so they got a man, his name was Ishnala Wicha, and they call him Lone Man, but it's not really a good translation. It means, it'd be better to say, he alone is a man. That's a better, he alone is a man. But anyway, he was the one that was nominated to give the account of her coming and also her teachings. And so as he gave this account, these are the 10 points that he enumerated as being the core of her teachings. So if you
can I interrupt a second?
Sure.
This is how you and I worked together. This is a perfect example.
Yeah.
So you told me about Teton Sioux music, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And how lots of these songs came or were attributed to white buffalo calf woman, right?
Yes.
And did Frances Denmore list 10 commandments? How do we get these?
Well, I think this is just it's a catchy phrase because of the fact that, you know, Moses brought 10 commandments. And I don't think that this was that right, Chris? Now, I think it was just coincidental that in Lone Man's account, he did. I mean, he wasn't trying to relate it to the Old Testament, the Mosaic laws, but no, he just happened to enumerate these 10.
What happened? I just wanted to, you know, revisit how we came up with these.
Wow.
So we were in email contact. That's how we write our articles. I came up with these 10 by listing different phrases, which were all from one single paragraph. Remember that? And you liked it. You said it works. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
So this is just a pedagogical device, you know, as a former professor, you know, we use to try to make new information more meaningful and familiar, let's say. Since the 10 commandments are familiar, we want to familiarize our audience with these 10 commandments. So these are attributed to white buffalo calf woman, right, Kevin?
Yes, yeah, these are 10 of the teachings that she brought.
WBCW. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, WBCW. Okay, now I get it. Also, we do have another question if if we want to
Okay.
look at it. So it says, hey, dear Kevin, could you speak to the auspicious prophecy of the swirling rainbows or the rainbow warrior? Somehow it seems to be pertinent.
Now,
You don't have to talk about that if you
well,
don't.
no, I think it really fits in. It really fits in because, you know,
Good.
this was a book that was written by Vincent Brown. Vincent Brown, I think it's called The Rainbow Warrior. Is that right, Chris?
That sounds familiar. I'm more familiar with his book, Voices of Earth and Sky.
Ah, okay. But yeah, I think before that he wrote a book called Rainbow Warrior, and in that book he does introduce this idea of these divine messengers. It's probably one of the first treatises. Now, Vincent Brown was a Baha'i, but he wrote these books primarily for just a general audience. And so this Rainbow Warrior, I believe, is something out of the Southwest. It could be Navajo. I'm not certain. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it refers, of course, the rainbow is a universal symbol of fulfillment. You know, like a fulfillment. I believe it's. I think it's what Noah saw when you know from the ark when the land appeared. I'm not sure, but anyway, this. I think it's a universal symbol of fulfillment, prophetic fulfillment. And so that's to me, this rainbow warrior is very fitting. Beyond that, I really don't know too much about how to answer that question. Yeah.
Well, if I may, why don't we, before going back to the previous slides, Jessica, you were asked a question at some point. Could you share your Native American heritage tonight? That may be of interest. So after doing that, would you then read these 10 commandments of White Buffalo Calf Woman, please?
I don't really feel like that's of interest, but so people ask me this a lot. People assume that I'm Native a lot of the time, and I very well might be. I happen to have been given a Native name, Anukwe. Was very lucky to grow up spending a lot of time on the Lac du Flambeau Reservation in northern Wisconsin, where I had some elders there who were mentors to me. Was lucky enough to live on Standing Rock for a while. And, you know, like a lot of white passing people in this country, we're like, oh yeah, my great great grandma was Cherokee, not a princess. We never said that. So you know what? Honestly, I don't know. What I do know is I feel at home around Ojibwe culture, and that feels like home to me. Doesn't mean I'm Ojibwe. I definitely don't think I am. Yeah, that's that. I mean, there's more to it, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, why don't you go through these 10 commandments, please? Would you do that?
The WBCW's 10 Commandments.
White Buffalo Calf Woman's 10 Commandments, yes.
Sure. 1, possess great respect and reverence toward sacred things. 2, live as belonging to one family. 3, be always very faithful to promises. 4, cease hostilities against other nations. 5, administer help to the sick. 6, comfort others in time of sorrow. 7, show kindness toward every living creature on earth. 8, remember the dead. 9, love your children dearly. 10, above all, lead pure lives.
Does this sound like a Baha'i-like spiritual teachings to you?
Feels like the essence of true religions.
So we have the oneness of religion, clear, loud and clear here, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now the questioner has asked about putting this in context of progressive revelation. So we all know that the Baha'i Faith teaches progressive revelation. It's a major doctrine. And progressive revelation, from my understanding, is a universal spiritual heritage that belongs to the entire planet. It's a process that has occurred worldwide. Now, Abdu'l-Bahá, in his, I think, 1906 tablet to Miss Alexander White, I forget her first name, that's what how the tablet is usually listed, says that in the past, continents were widely divided and communication between them was well nigh impossible until this age. So that tells me that religious traditions developed independently for as long as the continents were divided until this new day. There's a statement from the research department quoting one of, I think, a letter from Shoghi Effendi, in answer to the question, can more than one manifestation of God appear on the earth at the same time? The answer is yes. So while there may be a manifestation of God in the old world, to use the term we used earlier today, there may also be one concurrently in the new world. So there's a family or families of religious traditions in the new world, the teachings of White Buffalo Calf Woman being one of many. Now, the question was about prophets and prophecies. And I want to say that the Greek word prophetes, from which we get our English word prophet, actually means forth-teller rather than foreteller. So first and foremost, the teachings of White Buffalo Calf Woman, which we've represented here, these are just some of them. There are ritual ceremonies too, and so on that she also taught. Those are what she told the people when she appeared. That was her role as a forth-teller. Her other role as a foreteller, meaning foretelling the future. The most simple way to generalize the prophecies of Indigenous Messengers of God is their return. Would that be correct, Kevin?
That sounds good to me, yeah.
Okay, and your mother, the late, great Patricia Locke, was interviewed by another Baha'i, Jacqueline Left Hand Bowl, and this interview is published on the web. And Jacqueline Left Hand Bowl asked Patricia Locke how she viewed Baha'u'llah. Do you remember her answer?
No, I can't recall the
I believe that Baha'u'llah is the return of White Buffalo Calf Woman.
yeah.
So the most simple prophecies and the prophetic pattern throughout all the messengers of God is that of return, from my study of comparative apocalyptic literature and prophecies in all the world religions. Now, there's another question. Let's go back to the slide here so we can make some progress through the earlier slides.
Where would you like to go?
Back to, what is it, slide number 4?
Sure thing.
Okay, now we reviewed this prophecy last time, so let's just read the prophecy again, Kevin.
Okay, yeah. Abdu'l-Bahá's indigenous prophecy attached great importance to the indigenous population of America. Likewise, these Indians, should they be educated and guided, there can be no doubt that they will become so illumined as to enlighten the whole world. And that's from the Tablets of Divine Plan, page 33.
Next slide, please. This is a new slide for this presentation that we didn't have last week. Kevin and I have added 2 excerpts from letters from the House of Justice, because last time we were talking about how prophecies were conditional. Kevin, you brought that up in your opening remarks. In other words, the prophecies are certain to occur, but when and how they will occur are conditional. So, Jessica, would you read the first quote, please?
Sure. We cherish the hope that at this final conference, the friends will arise with enthusiasm and determination, not only to win the remaining goals of the plan, but to carry out Shoghi Effendi's injunction to win the allegiance of members of the various tribes of American Indians to the cause, thereby hastening the period prophesied by the Master when the Indian peoples of America would become a source of spiritual illumination to the world.
Okay, what does the House mean by hastening?
Make it come faster.
In other words, we can make the prophecy come true sooner. That's a possibility, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kevin, would you please read the other excerpt?
Yeah, the other side, it says, whether in Alaska's southeastern islands and rugged mountains, or in Canada's huge Indian reserves from the west to the east, Many Amerindian believers have arisen to serve the cause, and through their joint efforts, their sacrificial endeavors, and distinctive talents, they bid fair to accelerate the dawn of the day when they will be so illumined as to enlighten the whole world. And that's Universal House of Justice, July 1976.
Okay, so without attributing any importance to myself or to Kevin, I think what we're engaged in tonight is reflecting on perhaps these two statements. How do we hasten and how do we accelerate the fulfillment of Abdu'l-Bahá's remarkable prophecy, which a non-Baha'i scholar named Chelsea Horton, who did her master's thesis at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia and her PhD dissertation on the Baha'i Aboriginal encounter in British Columbia, she called the sole racial prophecy of the Baha'i Faith. Let's continue. Okay, we went over this last time. Let's go on. We went this over this too. Continue. We saw this also. We saw this as well. We got this. Let's go forward. This too. We went over the tablet to Amir Khan. Kevin, would you please read that key statement, starting with undoubtedly?
Yeah, this is from the tablet of Amir Khan. Undoubtedly, in those regions, meaning the Americas, the call of God must have been raised in ancient times, but it hath been forgotten now. End quote.
Okay, we have the Persian original in transliteration. Friends, if you read that aloud, that will approximate how it sounds in the original Persian. So the teachings of White Buffalo Calf Woman, would you agree that these represent what is meant by the call of God?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, call of God, yeah.
So that's one example of the truth of Abdu'l-Bahá's statement. Any comment on what hath been forgotten now?
Well, I think, one of the things that I mentioned this before, one of the reasons why my mom was so adamant about bringing this up was because in her experience growing up, with people that were born in the 1800s, that was their frame of reference. Their frame of reference was always these divine souls, these heavenly beings that were the source of anything good and holy. But then, as time went on, as the people were forced into, residential schools and boarding schools, it was just beat out of them. The memory of the covenant, the memory of the sacredness of this world was more or less just beaten out of them, and they were forced to accept everything as being a secular world. And so this is why, this is why people like Sitting Bull and others, they thought of the idea of becoming indoctrinated into the dominant culture was the very essence of becoming uncivilized, becoming a savage.
Okay, Kevin, in addition to that, we have an article in the series about this particular statement by Abdu'l-Bahá,
Yeah.
which we observe that this was written in at the time of the boarding schools.
Exactly. Yeah. When all this is being beaten out, right?
When it was official Canadian, I lived in Canada for 14 years, policy and policy of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, for which the head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs back then, Kevin Gover, apologized on September 8th, 2000. Remember, I requested a video of that from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and that's up on the web. One of my students converted it from VHS to digital. So there was a forced suppression, a prohibition of speaking the language in these boarding schools and of having anything to do at all with their spiritual heritage. Correct, Kevin?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So it was forcible forgetting. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
All right. Now that which is forgotten can be remembered or rediscovered if the conditions are ripe, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So this is not to be taken in the absolute sense. There's an article which we have at the end of the slideshow, I think number 36, if we could go there for a minute.
Oh,
All right, do you see the late Don Addison was a Choctaw elder? And do you see up third item down, Christopher Buck and Don Addison, Choctaw elder, Messengers of God of North America, in North America Revisited, an exegesis of Abdu'l-Bahá's tablet to Amir Khan. This is a 90-page article in which Don, my good friend Don, I miss him so much, and I discuss at length what is meant by the term forgotten, from my personal perspective, of course, and several Baha'i writings dealing with other traditions, including Christianity, by the way, use the term forgotten. All right, let's go back to the slide we were just at.
anybody remember what the number was?
No, I don't.
Okay, now,
There, that was it, I think. Wasn't that Tablet of Amir Khan?
yeah,
Right there.
let's go on. We went over this last time. It's a new Baha'i principle from Kevin and my understanding, and we're going to encounter some new slides that weren't present last time that will develop this theme more fully. Let's go on. How Abdu'l-Bahá added manifestations of God. Now, added is my word, or Kevin and my words, okay? But you'll see what we mean by this when we go through this. This is a letter from the House of Justice. And it continues throughout most of the slide with a couple of comments at the end. Jessica, would you read the first paragraph, please, the first bullet point?
Sure. Baha'u'llah made no mention of Buddha, and if it had not been for Abdu'l-Bahá's statement, we would not have been in a position to state definitely that Buddha had been a manifestation of God.
Okay, so what did Abdu'l-Bahá do with respect to the Buddha?
Named him as a manifestation of God.
He added him, right?
Yeah.
Which he had the authority to do. And if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a note that states Abdu'l-Bahá, quote unquote, added Krishna as well. All right, Kevin, would you read the next statement from the House, please?
Yeah. Oh, where are we?
Second bullet point. Left.
Oh, there are a myriad traditions and the legends of people that point back to some sort of divine revelation. But as the beloved guardian secretary pointed out on his behalf in a letter written to an individual believer on 13 March 1950, we cannot possibly add names of people we or anyone else think might be lesser prophets to those found in the Quran, the Bible, and our own scriptures.
Okay, but who can add manifestations of God?
Well, you know, the center of the covenant, the appointed interpreter, Abdu'l-Bahá.
Okay, so what we are, in a sense, proposing, and has been no official statement, I don't think either way on this, is that what Abdu'l-Bahá has done in the tablet to Amir Khan, which has now been released as an authorized translation. If you go to Baha'i.org and go to Baha'i Reference Library, click on the link to Abdu'l-Bahá's writings and talks, and click on additional writings, additional tablets, you will see the tablet to Amir Khan. It's simply called Extract from a Tablet of Abdu'l-Bahá. It's Kevin and my position that what Abdu'l-Bahá has done is added a category or a class of manifestations of God. Now, this is a personal perspective. It's not official. Either way, it's not something that has been negated or affirmed. It's an open question right now, but there appears to be a growing consensus that that's indeed what Abdu'l-Bahá has done, added the category of Indigenous Messengers of God to the Americas. Would you agree, Kevin?
Yeah, that's apparent. That's how I interpret that. Yes.
All right, let's go on.
Yeah.
Okay, now, what should our attitude be towards the indigenous traditions, the sacred traditions that have appeared, apart from the question as to whether or not manifestations of God were sent to the Americas? And we seem to agree that Abdu'l-Bahá affirmed that they were. This is another letter from the House, also a new slide for our presentation. Jessica, would you read the first bullet point, please?
Sure. It is suggested that instead you present the Baha'i concepts as expressed by Abdu'l-Bahá, namely that the fountainhead of all religions is to be found in God through the teachings of his prophets, and that all peoples have drunk at this ocean of divine revelation.
Does all people include the New World, which Kevin calls the Old World?
Yes.
I would say so, correct? Kevin, would you read the second bullet point, please?
Yes, the Baha'i attitude to earlier religions, therefore, is not that they are false or heathen, but that at root they are all true and that these fundamental truths still persist within them.
So what we can do, this is my understanding, is we are seekers after truth. And there's a tablet where Abdu'l-Bahá says, a rose is a rose no matter in what soil it springs from, okay? So one of the ways that we can connect these indigenous sacred teachings with the teachings of Baha'u'llah is to locate the truths that are in those sacred traditions and connect them with the Baha'i faith. I will read the third bullet point now, which I've highlighted in red. Baha'is encourage Indians in South America, for example, to see and reverence the profound spiritual truths, which are to be found in both their pre-Christian religions and in the Catholicism, which in later centuries has to varying degrees supplanted or overlaid their archaic faiths. So, Kevin, any comment on this passage?
Well, yeah, I think that this is what it was this very principle that what presaged the I guess it'd be the first incident of entry by troops in the Western Hemisphere, which was the huge influx of Baha'is in mostly starting in Bolivia and then going into Peru as well, amongst the campesinos, or the indigenous peoples of that region. And
Yes.
so, yeah, there was that, it was that tie-in that they saw to their traditional heritage that was the impetus to this I guess you'd say a mass conversion or entry by troops.
Kevin, in your autobiography, Arising,
Mhm.
which is also available as an ebook, and there's a link to it, to the Kindle edition on slide 36. You have a chapter on the Green Light Expedition,
Yes.
which was led by Rahia Khanum.
Mhm.
As all of you know, she was born in Canada and became the wife of Shoghi Effendi, our beloved guardian.
Mhm.
Now, I think you used the number 3,000, if I recall correctly, in your book. So that's mass conversion. That was one mass conversion. Jessica, would you read the next two bullet points, please?
Sure thing. Through the Baha'i teachings, the inner conflict which many still feel between their ancient religions and Christianity is resolved. An example of the Baha'i attitude is to be found in the operation of such radio stations as Radio Baha'i Ecuador, which has a policy of encouraging Indian arts and music and fostering in the Indians pride in their heritage.
Excellent. Now, the word encourage is repeated again in this letter. Baha'is encourage Indians of South America to see and reverence the profound spiritual truths which are to be found in their pre-Christian religions and in the Catholicism, and then encouraging Baha'is, I can't see the rest of that because it's blocked. What, to study their music?
Encouraging Indian arts and music and fostering in the Indians' pride in their heritage.
Okay, this, according to, this letter, is the attitude that we should have towards indigenous religions in our contacts with them, to encourage the study of those pre-contact or pre-Christian religions, right? To also include Catholicism and Christianity, because there's a connection there with progressive revelation, and then to encourage the arts and music. And all of this fosters not only an interest and an appreciation for their heritage, but for the connections, the resonance, the harmonics that we find in Baha'u'llah's teachings, in which these indigenous teachings, which are eternal, have been universalized. One way of creating profound unity, and one service that Baha'is can promote with all their contacts with indigenous peoples. Next slide, please. Okay, Baha'is have respect for these religions. That's another major theme of this PowerPoint presentation. Kevin, if you don't mind, would you read the first bullet point?
Yeah, okay. Baha'is believing in all revealed religious truth of past ages as an unfoldment of one divine plan, have respect for the customs and traditions relating to these religions and cultures. They desire to preserve the cultural elements that contribute to the well-being of man.
Kevin, during the colonial period, I don't know if it's ended or not, what was the attitude towards indigenous traditions and religions during the period of the conquest?
Yeah, well, that's well known. That's just that it was satanic or heathen. It was inspired from the devil.
In other words, the missionaries would say that to the indigenous peoples, right?
Yeah.
And Mayan sacred books, for example, were burnt.
They were burnt up. Yeah, all these, all the remnants or traces that they could find of the traditional spiritual heritage was effaced or destroyed.
In your book, Arising, you talk about your mother having attended a school. Was that a boarding school?
Yeah, when she was a child, she did, yes.
And please comment on what she told you about that experience with regard to trying to force her to forget her spiritual heritage.
Well, yeah, the kids, they had a lot of, they experienced a lot of corporal punishment from the, in her case, it was run by nuns. And there's one nun that was very, very brutal. And one time I pressed my mom, asked a lot of questions about that nun, who she was. I asked her, what was her name? And my mom said, her name was Sister Rocky Marciano. That was a heavyweight boxer. She couldn't remember her name, but she just threw that out. Anyway, but yeah, they used to beat the kids quite a bit. And, she was really good at, she knew everything that the, what do they call those? The altar boys, what they were supposed to do. She knew all their lines and everything, but they wouldn't let her, recite any of it. So she was really discouraged, and she, questioned the whole thing. Yeah. Anyway, I've got more stories about that.
Did she resolve, therefore, to try to restore or somehow educate, bring back, and so on, the ancient ways?
Well, I think she just went through a lot of a really, so many changes in life. Her leitmotif or her battle cry was justice, and so this is why she was so involved in all these different positive changes. These dynamic changes throughout the 60s and 70s and 80s. But then I think the capstone of her life was when she became a Baha'i, and then she served the last 8 years of her life on the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. So,
last time in part 1, 2 weeks ago, we discussed the World Parliament of Religions, the centenary that was held in 1993.
Yes.
Was that the year she became a Baha'i?
No, it was a little bit before that, I think.
Well, I think it was 1988 because we have an unpublished article on that
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah.
that we're waiting for David Langness to edit. Okay.
Okay.
By the way, I misspoke when I said that the quotes on slide 16 are from the House. They're actually from the Baha'i International Community, which is an agency of the Universal House of Justice. Let's go on. Next slide. All right, now we get to the individual messengers of God. And Kevin, if you don't mind, would you go through each one of them on this and the next slide and briefly introduce them to our audience?
Well, I can say just a little bit, this number one here, you can see is Deganawita, otherwise usually referred to as the peacemaker. I think a lot of people say it's not right to say his name, but anyway, this referred to as the peacemaker, who appeared amongst the Haudenosaunee. Originally, the 5 nations, what is it? The Mohawk, the Cayuga, Oneida, Onondaga, and there's another one, Seneca, those 5. And then later, the 6th nation would be the Tuscarora, who joined the Confederacy at a later date. But anyway, they were infamously antagonistic towards each other, and committed horrible atrocities towards each other until this man known as the peacemaker appeared in their midst and brought this great law of peace amongst the people. And his influence was so profound that he's universally considered like a divine being, a holy being that appeared. And that's over in the Finger Lakes area, what's now known as the Finger Lakes area of New York. And then number 2 is we already spoke at length about the Ptahintla, who, as they say, may have appeared something over 1,000 years ago, and was the one who brought, again, these divine laws. And then Sweet Medicine was appeared amongst the Cheyenne, now known as the Cheyenne people, who currently reside in 2 areas primarily in southeastern Montana, around Lame Deer, Bernie, Busby, Montana, in that area. And also there's another community, the Southern Cheyenne, who live in Oklahoma, around Cushing, not Cushing, I'll think of it later. It's kind of over towards the panhandle of Oklahoma, where they're based. And then number 4 is the Lone Man. This is the kind of like the almost like Noah, the one who built the ark for the Miwatani, the Mandan. They call themselves Nueta, the Nueta people, who famously were the ones that were provided hospitality for the Lewis and Clark expedition when they came up the Missouri River. They came right by my house here in 1803, and they were able to survive because of the largesse, the magnanimity of the Nueta, the Mandan people, and of course, all of their qualities, their values, their virtues were infused into them through this divine being. In English, they say a lone man. Now, Breathmaker number 5, this is the one that appeared amongst the Seminole, the Lower Creek people, the people who during the war, Seminole Wars, they retreated further down into Florida. It's now Florida. And so, yeah, if you read any of the older accounts of Seminole people, they attribute everything good, everything holy to the Breathmaker. So,
next slide, please.
And then number 6 is Quetzalcoatl. That's the plumed serpent. The plumed serpent, the divine being who was the founder of what's now referred to as the Aztec civilization. And the 7th that we mentioned before, Veera Cochin, the holy soul who appeared on Lake Titicaca. And then 8 is Galuskap, and that's this is the one that appeared up there amongst the Wabanaki, the people up there surrounding Green Acre. So there's quite a bit of information about Galuskap, and I think we will be able to get some further insights at some point on Galuskap. Number 9, Talking God. I believe that's Navajo, if I'm not mistaken. And I
Yes,
think number 10 is from Australia. Is that correct?
that's correct. We have
Yes.
four articles in our series on Aboriginal messengers of God.
I'm curious, do you all have anything on Nanabuju?
Not yet.
Yeah, we need to get some information about Nanabuju.
Yeah, I'd like some.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we agreed earlier today that at this stage, we would like to ask our audience if they would be interested in having presentations, additional webinars on these Indigenous Messengers of God. And if so, we can schedule those. I think we've reached a point where we've given the rationale, given the Baha'i texts, talked about approaches to Indigenous sacred traditions, which are the total opposite of the forced suppression in boarding schools, for example. And by the way, Kevin, remember that your mother, Patricia Locke, and Jacqueline Left Hand Bull presented a proposal to the World Parliament of Religions, which nearly passed. And one of them is to reverence or revere or learn about the myriad messengers of God that appeared among Indigenous peoples. Can you say something about that?
Well, specifically, I think that it had to do with the reason why it didn't pass was because of the reference to the papal bull that I think it's from 1520 that was, or one of them that was consigned or lessened the station of the souls of Native people to the extent that they were not able to possess land or to claim a right to land, I believe. Is that?
Yeah, thank you. And so it was
Something.
on that basis that the proposal was rejected.
Yeah.
But the principle still applies that your mother, and can you just talk about who Jacqueline Left Hand Bull is?
Well, she's a member of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. And yeah, and she, her parents are both from South Dakota also. And from, I think they're both from Rosebud, if I'm not mistaken, Rosebud Reservation.
Okay. Now I see a question here. I know we're getting towards the end of our time, right, Jessica?
Yes,
We have
sir.
an hour and a half.
Yep, we got 5 minutes to go.
There's a message that came at 9:22. Further webinars on these topics would be wonderful. Thank you so much for all your time and efforts. So I think that is one indication that maybe we can have more webinars, right?
Mhm. There was also a question right before that. It says on the last slide talks about social experiments in community building and social action. Are there any examples of these, or are there any proposals? Are there any Indigenous models to enlighten the world?
Panama, possibly, Kevin?
Yeah. There's really a lot going on in Panama. I think all throughout different regions of Central and South America. And I think here in the United States, we've got a lot going on on the Navajo Reservation. So many different core activities, youth activities, children's classes. And up here in this region too, there's quite a bit. There's a couple what's called Reservoir Clusters. One of them is around Turtle Mountain area, which is the geographic center of North America. And so around the communities of, mostly around Dunseith, North Dakota. It's an Ojibwe area, and they have regular activities going on there, sustained activities. And then Another area is in at Rosebud, just a couple hours south of here. They have consistent activities going on there. And interestingly enough, one of the places that's really has the I think it's the longest running and currently only all Indigenous assembly is up there in the Green Acre area. It's up there in Nova Scotia, Eskasoni area of Canada, Eastern Canada, Cape Breton.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you,
Okay,
Jessica.
thank you.
My pleasure. And we've got several more people saying, we would love to see further webinars on this topic. Thank you. We have a friend right now in Sweden, and it's sort of almost 3:30 his time. He's watching, and he says, do more.
Okay, that's good.
So
All right, very good.
thank you very much. we'll talk about going forward and potentially doing more webinars for everyone on these topics and other persons that I would also like the opportunity to hear further lectures about the different Indigenous Messengers of God.
Very good.
There's
Would you
interest.
like to close with a prayer from Kevin?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll do a song, and it's a healing song, and I really like this song. It's got very few words. The first part, there's no words, and the song, it says, I have come to heal mankind. That's basically what it's saying. I've come to, I guess it would be heal, but it'd be to renew mankind. It's a voice from the heavenly worlds saying this. I've come to renew or to make over humanity. And the first part, there's no words. Wahunu pawa, pia wakare, miye pia wakare lo, herere. Wichasha, pia wakare, miye pia wakare lo, herere. I have come to renew and humanity. Use that for healing, to ask for divine healing.
Well, everybody,
Okay.
thank you.
Very
Much
good. Okay,
appreciated.
good night now.
Yeah.
Thank
Everybody
you.
stay safe out there. Stay 6 feet apart from everybody. And we'll see you back here real soon.
Okay, hope so.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody at home.
Okay, good night.
Good night.